Israel's eastern border. Well, as ties with traditional Western allies take a nosedive, Israel has been working quietly to strengthen relations with countries in Africa. This week, President Isaac Herzog will be visiting the Democratic Republic of the Congo and Zambia. It will be the first visit to the DRC by an Israeli leader, while the Foreign Minister, Gideon Sa'ar, opened an Israeli embassy in Zambia's capital, Lusaka, earlier this week. Well, to talk more about the potential and the growing partnership between Israel and Africa, I'm delighted to welcome to the studio Dumisani Washington. He's the founder and CEO of the Institute for Black Solidarity with Israel and the author of Zionism and the Black Church. Welcome to the program, Dumisani.
Thank you, Laura.
Great to meet you. Great to have you with us. So let's talk broadly, first of all. What are the opportunities for Israel and countries in Africa when it comes to a growing partnership?
They're limitless, right? And this goes back to the time of Golda Meir, the foreign minister throughout Africa during that time. And she's the creator of Mashav, as the Israelis would know. And even here now, these decades later, it's probably even more so in that Africa. There's so many things that are going on there. The difficult part is that there's a great deal of extremism, Al-Qaeda, ISIS, that's happening in different parts. But the positive thing is that you have a tremendous amount of growth. It is the youngest continent on the planet. 70% of African population, sub-Saharan, is 30 years and younger. And so there's an explosion that's actually, as a matter of fact, you have the two places in the world that have the most babies are Israel and Africa, right? So this is actually happening. And so you have a lot of young people there.
Optimistic people looking towards the future.
100%. I was just in Addis Ababa with some of our colleagues for a specific event there in Ethiopia. And my wife and I are walking around the town, and it's like a youth convention, right? It's like everybody's these young people everywhere, and you can see it there. So there's a lot of vibrance.
Which is the opposite of Europe, where it's kind of scary. You rarely see the prams, the babies, the strollers anymore. Yeah,
absolutely. It was amazing to us, right? And so you're seeing that happen. So when you talk about Israel in terms of the resources that are there in Africa, the love, the relationship that has been the Africa-Israel relationship for all of this time, the sky's the limit. Netanyahu said 2 years ago that Africa's our top priority. We found that regardless to who's in power, even when I think Yair Lapid was prime minister for a short period of time, a couple of years ago, he said almost the exact same thing. Africa's our priority. So that's always been Israel's priority, and Africa's as well.
So it's good to see the president going to these two countries later this week. Agriculture, it's kind of key to the relationship, isn't it, between Israel and Africa? Israel has a lot of agriculture tech. There's the water irrigation, of course, and seed programs and all the rest of it.
Right.
And, of course, there are these exchange programs, and that brought young Joshua Molel to Israel from Tanzania. And tragically, he was brutally murdered by Hamas on October 7th. I just want to ask you, I mean, this was a young African man who was literally ripped to pieces on camera by Islamist terrorists. What has been the reaction, both in Africa and in the United States, to that?
There's been a doubling down. So what we saw as that was happening, as all the images were coming out from October the 7th, we have a lot of African colleagues, but particularly Sudan and Nigeria, they basically said to us, that happens to us every week, meaning when they saw what Hamas did, they're talking about Boko Haram and the Fulani herdsmen in Nigeria, or as you're in Sudan, whether it's the Janjaweed or whether you have now the RSF, these different fights and clash. There are millions of Africans being displaced and killed and tortured and all these things. So they understand what extremist violence is. So for them, it was a doubling down on their stance where Israel is concerned. There's a great deal of love that was being poured out. There's a great deal of understanding. And when they saw specifically that story about Josh Malal, and we shared it as did others, my son did a specific article on it, and not just the killing of that young man, but the celebration around it, and then the mutilate, just all these horrific things. Many people, even those who were not in the Israel space or anything like that, we saw on social media, their response was, it was an eye-opening thing. For them, they saw Israel was always the problem. It was the aggressor, Israel. Yes, ma'am. So when they saw that, they took a step back and they went, wait a minute, this young Tanzanian boy, what does he have to do with the Israeli-Palestinian conflict? And it caused a lot of controversy. It's still rippling right now.
Yeah, that's that was one of the most difficult images from that day. And just driving the love, I think, for Israel in parts of Africa, I wonder if you agree with this, is the Christian Zionist movement, the African Christian Zionist movement, of course, which is very strong in countries across Africa. At the same time, over in the United States, you've got people like Tucker Carlson, the hard-right media personality, trying to kind of do something very strange, which is kind of sever Christianity from its roots in Judaism and of course from Judaism's roots in Israel. Just, I mean, how do you counter that? What do you make of that?
Laura, it's funny. I love the way you couched it, because everybody doesn't couch it that way. He's absolutely trying to do that. He's trying to sever support for Israel, which in the United States, just like in Africa, comes most strongly from Christian Zionists, right? Christians who do it by faith and in terms of practicality and everything. And so for Tucker, whatever his motivation is, that is what he is doing. And it's having an impact on those particularly who are unaware. In other words, if they're not aware of what he's doing, they'll just kind of take it, oh, yeah, well, he just said this. Because Tucker couches his things in a way that seems non-threatening, which is why he would platform a neo-Nazi like Nick Fuentes and give him softball questions and kind of let him rant on about, Jews and Israel, that type of thing. So Tucker's, I said this, I was one of the first ones, but I wasn't the only one. He's probably one of the most dangerous anti-Semites in the United States right now. And I want to be very, very clear, people hear me say this, I'm not about cancel culture. Let him say what he wants to say, right? This is not about that. I'm talking about the words that he's using and the way that he is very nefariously, consistently demeaning and demonizing Israel, Israel's prime minister, and then by virtue of connection, Jews, which is why you would bring on a neo-Nazi and not challenge any of his I love Stalin, I love Hitler type of thing. So it's very, very dangerous what Tucker's doing right now. And
of course, he's on the right, whereas on the left,
yes,
just had the victory for Mamdani, of course, in New York City. And
yes,
he plays the other way, doesn't he? He says that, the Jews are part of the white oppressor class and we, people of color, must all stick together. I mean, how do you interpret
It's
that?
amazing. So people are seeing it in live, in real, like in stereo right now, but they're getting both sides of it, right? They're getting the right-wing Jews aren't part of us. They're dual loyalty, right? They're not really Americans. And then, of course, Mamdani, who was a star with his Students for Justice in Palestine, membership there in college, and then the whole From the River to the Sea and Intifada. Absolutely. So for him, it is an oppressor class. Israel is a settler colonial state. He, like the rest on the left, will never address Hamas, never address the PLO, never address the Palestinian Authority, Islamic Jihad, none of those things, even when they're slaughtering their own people. As you know, shortly after the ceasefire, Hamas began killing its own people in the streets. No protests from people like Mamdani, Ilhan Omar, nothing, had nothing to say, proving they cared nothing about the Palestinian people. They only want to demonize Israel.
Yeah, it's a scary world at the moment, isn't it?
Yes, ma'am.
And as you say, for Christians in Africa as well, there are terrible things happening there as well. Pastor Washington, a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Laura. I appreciate it.